As white people, is our deepest fear that we are inadequate? Or is our deepest fear that Black excellence is powerful beyond measure? It is their light, not their darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who are they to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are they not to be? Look honestly, and you will see how they demonstrate love as a reflection of our unwarranted hate. Our playing God does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about positioning ourselves and controlling the narrative so that Black and brown folks feel insecure around us. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to manifest the glory of the Spirit that is within us. And it's not just in some of us, it's in all of us, no matter what your skin tone is. And as we let our own light shine, by atoning for and repairing the harm of our ways, as we learn to serve and see the true greatness of Aboriginal and Indigenous cultures and human beings around us, we unconsciously give white people around the planet the permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates others. From this point, we can build a new world that is connected to the planet and each other. Together, humanity is achievable.
What are these white people afraid of?
They're afraid of Black groups, mobs, rising up and taking the power. It does make me feel uncomfortable to talk about these things because they are incredibly disturbing and revolting.
Eric Lott, a professor at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, says blackface represents a strange mix of envy, fascination, desire, and fear. The history of blackface is long and complex and deeply ingrained in our culture.
Who was that lady I saw you with this afternoon? That was no lady. That was my wife.
Even Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd blacked up.
Can't tell lady sing this song, do that, do that. Can't tell me sex by my long. Fantastic, isn't it? Wine run all night.
For more than 100 years, white and then Black performers wore dark makeup and created not only a popular theatrical form, but stereotypes that are still with us today.
Okay, sorry I look like this. I'm actually in the middle of moving to Norway. But I have something to say to any white people watching. Of course you're uncomfortable. Guilt is one of the most uncomfortable feelings ever. Now, you don't have to feel guilty because you were never the one oppressing. You've been not racist, you've been equal, you've been open. But as a race, we are guilty. Not as individuals necessarily. But let's look at our discomfort and our guilt as taking off a band-aid or a plaster. If you're taking it off and halfway through it's too painful, you don't put it back on. You keep going. Wounds won't heal by neglecting them. So if you're feeling uncomfortable, you're feeling guilty, it will feel like that. Keep pushing. Imagine what people of color feel. Yeah, that's it.
Racism is about jealousy. If you think that's a reductive statement, please stick with me. When I say jealousy, I'm talking about insecurity, which is really what jealousy is, but I think it's easier to understand if I say insecurity rather than just jealousy. Because we know from appropriation that we are very jealous of other cultures. Why would we want to listen to the music, eat the food, wear the clothes, do the hairstyles, have everything, the language, but not give credit where credit is due and not uplift the people who created it? White people are so lost in feeling like they don't have a connection to culture, especially many of us who are very far removed from our European roots. And I think the need to fill that space and that insecurity of this lack of culture and lack of something to call our own is often filled with cultural appropriation and the idea that being white is superior. I was first introduced to this concept of racism being jealousy in college, and I can't trace it back to one particular scholar, but I would like to give credit where credit is due to that Black scholar. If you can find anything tracing it to one particular person, please leave that in the comments. I think it's important to think about racism in this way if we want to unlearn it. Because, as some people say who are non-monogamous, or anyone who's just working on their relationships, jealousy is an indicator that something is not quite right with us. It's an indicator of our insecurity and how we might be feeling. It's not about what our partner is doing or what someone on Instagram is doing with their life that makes us feel inadequate. It's about something going on inside. And I think we really need to interrogate that. What is it about people of color showing excellence, people of color maybe being more in touch with culture, people of color being more in touch with the environment, people of color making better food, and everything else that we envy? What does that trigger in us? And why do we have the need to put those people down? It's about jealousy. And if we can figure out that we're feeling that way and trace that feeling back to maybe some of our unconscious biases, I think it's a lot easier to start thinking about how can we unlearn that? How can I feel secure in my identity as a white person who has roots in maybe Italian and like other cultures, but like doesn't really feel connected to anything? How can I feel secure in myself to not want to put others down, whether that be racism or any other form of discrimination, or just plain hating on another woman because she's amazing? You know, I think this makes it seem like racism is very simple, but it also just helps us frame it in a way that's accessible to us. We know that dismantling racism starts with individual work, and personal growth is all about thinking about the hard things about yourself and the things and parts of yourself that you don't like. And jealousy is one of those things. No one wants to be jealous. It's an awful, awful feeling. And we don't want to admit that we're jealous. And we shy away from that, but it's something we can interrogate, and I think that is going to help us go a long way. Anyway, just my thoughts. Happy Juneteenth. I hopefully will speak about this more coherently in the future. Black Lives Matter.
Have you guys seen that video that's going around of a black lad walking around in his neighborhood, and then he's being followed by a group of white people asking him why he's there, because they particularly felt that he shouldn't be in this neighborhood? He repeatedly said to them, "This is my neighborhood." They constantly following him and harassing him for being in that particular neighborhood. Now, this is a public road. Even if it wasn't his neighborhood, this is a public road. This is how scary, you have to be fearful of us, our black men, where they go. Because, anything could have happened to you. He had his mobile phone and he filmed it. He was filming it. And there is this one man, he drove up in his car like Starsky and Hutch. Yes, I'm that old, I remember Starsky and Hutch. And went for a gun. It was one of the other men that stopped him. But they were there harassing this guy. He's walking, minding his own business, and harassing him. He's in his own neighborhood. His mother has now put a statement out, says, yes, they do live in the neighborhood. And he went out for a walk so he can have a word, speak to his girlfriend privately on his phone. And why is it white people are so scared of black people? What is it? If you're white and you're watching this, let me know. What is the problem with you and black people? Why are you so scared? And why is it that you have to harass our men, right? In particular, right? Why are you so scared? There's good white people and there's bad white people. There's good black people and there's bad black people. We're not all the fucking same. What is it that's going on? Why? And you're going to be called out because now we've got social media, we've got mobile phone, and we'll film that shit, right? So you're going to be called out. You know, it's particularly disturbing because, you know, anything can happen. What about the lad they found hanging from a bridge, or was it a tree or something? He didn't put himself there. You know, he was at work. He was in his work. He was working. You know, this is the thing in this day and age, 2024, and we've got to fear. We have to be fearful for our men and women when they're out on their own. This is crazy, and the government need to do something about this. This cannot go on. It can't go on. Anyway, let me have your comment. Put it in the comment. Let's have your comment. See you on the next one.
Why do white people resent Black excellence? Let's talk about it. Not all white people are racist, obviously, but there is a specific subset for whom Black excellence seems like a personal affront to them, right? It really bothers them when Black people succeed. The 13th Amendment emancipated enslaved Black Americans in 1865, and then the Jim Crow laws kind of wrapped up with the passing of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. So if we do the math, that's about 61 years in which Black Americans were able to strive for success in any sort of meaningful way without like the constraints of the law pulling them down. 61 years. If we compare that to white Americans who besieged a land already owned and occupied by indigenous Americans, we'll put that around 1620 when, you know, the Mayflower came here, then that gives them about 425 years to establish success in this country. 425 versus 61. If we compare those two fundamentally very different time spans, like, how much did white Americans actually do in all of that time? If we are to compare even the poorest and most underprivileged of white America to Black America generally, it is clear that white Americans are born way past the start line, right? By that I mean, by like nature of being white in American society, you do benefit from all sorts of privileges. And like, to be frank, you're not exhausted by the horrible experience of facing racism on a daily basis, right? You do have a ton of privileges. So I imagine existing in this bubble of privilege that you like totally deny. The existence of Black people for whom success is like second nature, when it comes so easily and so readily, even though you've only had 61 years to achieve it, I imagine that's exhausting and frustrating. I imagine it makes people feel super, super inferior and hurts certain people's tiny, tiny little egos. And what do they blame that deep, deep psychic pain on? Well, of course, DEI and critical race theory and affirmative action. So I guess the question is, what might help those white Americans who just so strongly detest Black excellence? Like, what will help you? And for that, I would suggest like a lot of therapy, like a ton of therapy. And I would also just suggest that we open the schools, right? We teach people history. Yeah, maybe? Okay, bye.
85% of white men are the men that are raping and grooming. It's not migrants, it's not Black people, it's not minorities, it is white men, the men that are in this country. The same way how they decide to put the focus on trans people, put the focus on Black people, put the focus on the minorities to keep our attention away from what's actually going on. It is because of race. It's always been because of race. People think that when we talk about, being pro-Black and whatnot, it means being anti-white. The only reason why they think that is because being pro-white has always meant being anti-Black. It's not the same thing. We just want peace. You lot don't know what peace is.
I think it's Black supremacy.
Black supremacy doesn't even make any sense. That can't make sense because in order to have supremacy and racism, everything, it requires a power dynamic. So Black supremacy is like saying Black fatigue. Black fatigue only exists because white people cannot understand the privilege that they have naturally in the society that they have. That's like a man talking about male privilege doesn't exist. That doesn't make any sense. The society is built around you guys. Yes, men still have depression. Yes, men still suffer. Yes, men still unalive themselves due to the system that who built. It's like Black supremacy that doesn't exist. I wish it did.
So this lady asks, this Black lady, are white women really that scared of Black women? And I'm going to say yes. And this is my opinion as a white woman who is 53 years old and has lived in the South in Georgia my entire life. But it's not being scared, but it's a fear. And it's not a physical fear. It is the mental fear. It is what we see in you and what we see you doing and how it challenges us and the fear of that. So we see Black women and we see how strong you are. We see you coming together as a community. We see you supporting each other. We see you supporting your community, supporting your families, supporting your children, going out and fighting for your rights, being authentic in your race and in your femininity. Anyway. And we're jealous. I think we're jealous because we would love to be that, I think, and we don't know how to break out of the indoctrination that we have been suppressed by our entire lives. And I'm not giving white women a pass, don't get me wrong, but I know I and most women have been told, white women have been told our entire lives, be quiet, know your place, be a good girl, don't rock the boat, don't be too much. And when you are any of those things, you are ostracized because you have rocked their boat. And that is what black women are. You rock our boat, our mental boat, because you challenge us to look at how we are deficient and not living in our truth, and it makes us uncomfortable. And people don't like to be uncomfortable, and it makes us start to question ourselves, and people don't like to question themselves. We would rather live in our little bubble of white supremacy and what we know and comfortableness. I know that's not a word. Than a lot of people would, white women would, rather than challenge themselves to grow and know more, because it's easy. Doing the work is hard. It's really hard. I've been doing the work the past several years, and it's hard. It is hard admitting some truths about yourself and some truths about yourself as a white woman. So yeah, I think that white women are scared of black women because you challenge us in that way, and a lot of us don't like it. And that's why we fear you. It's because we fear what you make us face.
It might be weird, but I've been making an effort to try to see the world through the eyes of black Americans. And I wanted to share a couple of things that I've learned so far. I'm John. I make content that tries to model empathy and curiosity for our social differences. Number one on the list, black people don't hate me. I guess I didn't know necessarily how they would react, knowing all of our history. But yes, they see my white face. Yes, they know history. But one of my friends said one time, if you're cool with us, we're cool with you. And that made a lot of sense to me. Number two, many black people don't feel comfortable in white spaces. This is something I discovered by posting videos and all the comments. Many people said they may feel, or it may appear that they're comfortable, they may look relaxed, but there's just kind of a vibe that they don't belong there. Maybe it's unfortunately sometimes explicit, but vast majority is probably more like microaggressions that people don't even realize. But there's that. Number three, black history is American history. They corrected me on this early on, and it's because it's not that we don't want to have a designation for understanding the history and the experiences of black Americans, but it's more like when we call it black history, that implies that it doesn't belong to anyone else. Whereas if you really think about it, slavery, for example, that's more like white history than black history. Number four, I shouldn't focus on all the bad stuff so much. When I'm making videos, try to explore our worlds. I do have a tendency, maybe it's my own curiosity or maybe it's my biases, to focus on slavery and discrimination and segregation. And people have told me, hey, look, we do want people to understand those things better, but we also don't want to be defined by that. So I also need to focus on the amazing and greatness of black people and their contributions in our country. Number five, they know I have blind spots of my own and they're okay with that. It's more like, what's my attitude about it? Am I aware or trying to be aware? Do I have some humility about it? Am I open to learning? Or do I have a vibe like, I don't even care if I have blind spots. I don't care how they come across to you. That's a big difference. And number six, black people don't want revenge. They want to live life abundantly. Yes, they want to live in a fair society. They don't want harms and injustice and flawed systems to be papered over or denied. They want accountability, but more than anything, they just want to live and be themselves and have fun and feel like they belong here. Not just on paper, but they feel it. Anyway, I'm learning a lot and it's been a great journey and I'm going to continue and I'll share some more when
I don't tell my boarding school orientation story very often because it's boring. There's so many other brown and black people who have the same story. It's not even a big deal. I mean, you could probably put yourself in this story and swap a couple details around, and you've literally had this conversation before. His dad walks up to me. He's like, hey, what sport did they recruit you for? And he said it in a very smug and demeaning way. And I felt small for a second. And then I remembered that I was a classical musician and a really good ballet dancer at the time. And I was like, well, I don't play a sport. And so they couldn't have recruited me for one. But if they did, maybe it was that. Maybe it was the music. Maybe it's the ballet. What does your son do? What sport does he play? And then the guy was like, and then he grabbed his coffee and ran. In the grand scheme of racial American oppression, it's nothing. But if you're raising little brown or black kids, or you're somebody who doesn't want to raise rude children, keep listening. Usually when we think about people who believe that black people are only good at rapping and running, we think, oh, they're so stupid. Stupid people, stupid ideas, racism, so stupid. But there's a really big problem with just dismissing that as stupid and useless and harmless. It's not. It keeps alive this idea from the Reconstruction period and this idea that President Andrew Johnson, way back in the day, would love for you to all keep helping keep up there. Now, everything great that I know at this current period of my life is from the amazing historian Carol Anderson. I would totally suggest you read her. She's accessible, it's clear, the bibliographies are insane. It's her book, White Rage, How Our Unspoken Racial Divide is Affecting Our Country to This Day, that helped me reframe the rapid and running question. She comes out of the gate running in the very first chapter called Reconstructing Reconstruction. How does she do that? Well, she reminds us of this. Back during the Civil War, back when the country was even founded, when slaves even first started arriving here in 1619, we weren't a country then, but you get the idea. There's this whole economic system that's based on labor that's cheap or labor that's free. It's easily exploitable. You own the people that are doing that labor and you control all their movements. That's a really lucrative business. Then the Civil War happens and you find yourself with this whole Reconstruction situation happening. And what does Reconstruction threaten to bring? Black economic independence. So all that excellence, all that Black excellence that was running those plantations, the different business strategies and planting strategies that these people had brought with them when they got dragged over here, or it had been passed down because their family had been dragged over here, all of that was this big possibility that those same people, now free, were going to be able to have their own economic independence. And it was going to undo the current structure. How do you combat this? It's something called Black codes, and they were all over the southern states. And these were codes of conduct and behavior and payment that really put Black people, newly freed, basically right back into slavery. There's this idea that like, oh, after the Civil War and Martin Luther and Rosa Parks and like 3 days of civil rights work, everything became equal. And now if you're not doing well as a brown or Black person, it's because of your own laziness and your own fault. And it's crazy to me that when you go back and you look at just even alone the history of Reconstruction, you can see this generational setup for failure and how this has never been a problem about Black people's willingness to work or Black people's ability to work hard. It's been about people trying to steal that labor and use it and take everything they could for themselves. So Anderson makes it clear that the South started to accomplish with votes and police officers what they couldn't do with bayonets, what they couldn't do with bullets, and what they couldn't do because they lost the war. For example, like with Mississippi leading the way in 1865, making up these codes of law that only applied to free Black people and no one else. This whole first chapter, we learn of all the different ways that white supremacist states were basically reinstated right back in the South, as if nothing had happened. And this is when you say, oh, well, Andrew Johnson and the Union, didn't they step in and do something? No, shocker, they did not. Even Union General Ulysses S. Grant, he didn't see anything wrong with Black codes. Black codes started popping up in Florida, and they were horrible, they were brutal, they were violent. And all these Union guys were like, you know, they've got to keep these lazy Blacks from just being vagrants. Were there Union people who were against it? Absolutely. Did that change anything? Not really. So Andrew Johnson's out here in his State of the Union speech, triumphant. He's like, look, we did what we meant to do. And we got our government, federal government, taking care of everything. Everything's going to be great. And then you've got these southern states that are like, yeah, everything's going to be just fine. Because now that we have these Black codes, we're going to make sure these lazy Blacks are not going to be a burden on society. But what they didn't realize is between Andrew Johnson's policies and these Southern Black codes, they were ensuring Black dependence because you didn't have right to land. You could be violently assaulted at any point. You didn't get good wages, and all of your movements were restricted. It's not that they didn't believe in Black excellence. It's that they knew its power and they had to cut it down and stop it. And if I had a brown or Black kid in the society right now, one of the things I would drill really hard into their head is this. It's not that these people let you that gives you this power to be who you are. It's because the law has now stopped them from stopping you. Just this little bit of background reminds us that racism isn't stupid. It's brilliant and it's very, very good business. And just on the rapping and running point for a second, there's nothing wrong with being a great rapper. There is nothing wrong with being intelligent and good at the sport you play. In fact, I almost wish that guy had asked me, what massive, beautiful rap album did you create to attract the attention of the Phillips Exeter admissions board? But that said, I want you to think for 2 minutes about the kind of people that are still benefiting from owning those teams and owning the music industry. And I want you to ask if it's as diverse as you think it is. Think about how people are always willing to let a small number of exceptional Black people make the money. And think about why they're okay with it.
I'm going to keep saying this with my whole chest because some people are not deep thinkers. I understand that you're not a critical thinker. This is not for you. This is just not for you. Scroll up. So, my point today is, well, not today, but at this moment, like, why does Black joy bother some white people? And some other groups, but majority is white people. And not all of you. You know what I'm talking about. You ever notice how the group of Black folks, like they come together laughing, dancing, and just vibing, and suddenly it's labeled as too loud, too ghetto, or too much? Jealousy. Jealousy. You know why? Because they couldn't strip that away. And it's surviving. But let's be real. It's not about the volume that's the problem. It's the vibrations. It's the freedom. It's the fact that we can still find joy after centuries of trying to be stripped of who we are. We still make something out of nothing. You understand? See, Black joy is like disruptive in certain people. It challenges. And where we're supposed to be broken and angry and silent, it's like loving, living, and celebrating. So it's not just confusion. It's threatening to a certain group of people. Because Black joy, for us, is power, is resistance, it's healing, it's ancestral. Of all the things they said we could not do, it's lies. Remember, we were here way before other groups were here. And now our happiness is not a performance. It's reclaiming who we said we always were. So the next time somebody looks uncomfortable with your Black joy, remember that. You're not the problem. They're just uncomfortable and can't believe that after all this time, we are still celebrating who we are and who we are meant to be and who we are growing to be. So tell me, have you ever felt like your joy made somebody else uncomfortable? Let's talk about it, y'all. To me, I don't give a flying fuck who feels uncomfortable. This is my life, my body, and if you feel uncomfortable, move the fuck away. Right. Because where I was for Black Bike Weekend, we were on the side, I'm not going to say the grown folk side, but we like our peace. So, of course, it was a mix of Black and white people. Like, we all around each other. We all talking to each other. You think anybody grabbed their purse because they see bikers in leather? No, they're used to it. They're talking, they're waving, they're like, oh, let me tell me about your bike, blah, 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 blah. These are people talking, not afraid and not jealous. There are some, but we didn't cross any this weekend, okay? But have y'all ever experienced that? Like, you having joy, you having celebration, especially with all the graduates. Did you see those comments talking about Black fatigue in the comments of Black joy celebrating the college? See, the point that I'm trying to get at is no one who doesn't, how can I say this? If you Black, you understand. It comes naturally. And it doesn't matter what state you from. We all have a common denominator of celebrating our Blackness. And people can't stand that. People can't stand that. And I'm not just talking about in America. We go somewhere else. Black joy is celebrated different ways, but we still have that common denominator of celebrating of what we achieve regardless of the fact. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox. Anyway, happy Tuesday.
In 1892, Ida B. Wells exposed how white men used a sickening fear of Black men having children with white women as a twisted justification for the horrific lynchings of black people. Decades later, in 1916, Madison Grant's infamous book, The Passing of the Great Race, became a chilling blueprint for white supremacist ideology. Grant's twisted scientific racism proclaimed that Nordic whites were intellectually, culturally, and morally superior, portraying any intermixing with black people or other immigrants as an existential threat to the supposedly pure American stock. Grant's book fed into a misguided belief that democracy and racial homogeneity were at odds. Fast forward a century, and the alleged Buffalo Killer echoes this disdain for democracy, claiming it leads to the dreaded replacement. In fascist ideology, this fear of replacement fuels a toxic brew of nationalism and division. Domestic enemies are those who support democracy, immigration, and equality, and to these radicalized individuals, the mere existence of people who look, think, or behave differently is a threat to their imagined homogeneous nation. This irrational fear-mongering has tragic consequences. The alleged Buffalo Killer's manifesto espouses scientific racism, which is pseudoscience, mirroring Grant's twisted theories of Nordic superiority. For him, this hatred boils over into a senseless act of mass murder. White replacement theory, or WRT, is a deceptively fresh label for a dangerous ideology with deep roots in fascism. It's a propaganda machine that peddles the same poisonous lies of invasion, racial and political replacement, and fear of the other. This theory is not just harmless rhetoric, it's a dangerous justification for mass violence. By normalizing WRT, we risk destroying democracy and the ideals of human equality it embodies. It targets the very notion of shared humanity that forms the foundation of our society. WRT goes beyond mere bigotry, it's steeped in Eurocentrism. Despite the arbitrary nature of the European and non-European distinction, it elevates Europeans as superior, citing their inventions and innovations. But this misguided belief is rooted in a warped understanding of heritage shaped by the racist concept of whiteness in America. The proponents of WRT ignore vast swaths of human history to construct a false narrative of white superiority at the expense of their own actual heritage. They boast about music and technological advances, but even a cursory glance at the world reveals innovation across countless cultures. This elaborate deception serves a sinister purpose: to trick poor white people into blindly supporting a ruling elite. WRT is a system of oppression that uses value hierarchies, dualism, and the logic of domination to maintain control. It also aligns with the feminist critiques of white supremacy as it intersects with patriarchy. I'm sure we've all heard the phrase, "It's not what you look like on the outside, it's what's on the inside that counts." It's a sentiment that echoes the timeless values of equality and tolerance. However, for some, the idea of inner worth isn't enough. Their concerns lie not in aesthetics, but in the foolish belief that their societal status, their culture, is somehow inherently linked to their genetics. They subscribe to this harmful ideology known as white supremacy, a worldview that persists in America despite its vile history. This belief is not an accident. It's a centuries-old construct designed to maintain a strict hierarchy: the ruling class, the warrior class, and the underclass. In this context of American chattel slavery, this hierarchy manifested as plantation owners, overseers, underemployed free whites, and enslaved black people. White supremacy seeks to perpetuate this stratification by keeping powerless white people in line. It exploits their fears and insecurities, convincing them that their well-being depends on the oppression of others. This distorted perspective has led to the mass incarceration of people of color and, in extreme cases, genocidal tendencies. WRT alleges that the white race is being replaced by immigrants and people of color. This fear-mongering tactic is a desperate attempt to galvanize support for the untouchable ruling class. It's all too evident in the contrasting ways that people of color and white people are treated by the justice system and the media. Scandals and crimes committed by white people are often swept under the rug or downplayed, while those involving people of color are met with swift and punitive consequences. The message is clear. White supremacy seeks to maintain an unchallenged power structure. It uses fear and division to control and oppress those it deems inferior. If you ever catch me bootlicking for the rich, hunt me down and slap the shit out of me.
It really is so good. Yeah, it's watermelon flavor. Let's get into it. This is part 2 of the watermelon stereotype. Watermelon didn't have any racial ties or meanings originally, and Americans were just as likely to link it to hillbillies in Tennessee to black slaves in South Carolina. Strangely, what people don't realize is that watermelon was very much a part of the everyday life of the African American slave. They would use watermelons to add extra weight to their cotton quotas. They would get the first day off of the harvest to eat watermelon, and they would grow and sell it on their plantations as they were slaves. But at that time, there was a very delicate balance between slave and slave owner. White slave owners needed to see their slaves indulging and enjoying the watermelon. They needed this to feed their God complex. They needed to see that the slaves' enjoyment of the watermelon was at their hands, and emancipation changed all of that. Part 3.
The reason why you become silent, there's one that always comes up, and that's fear. White people are afraid of black people. They are afraid of us. And it's a very interesting thing because black people know it. We know white people are afraid, but you have to start getting into the psychology. What are you afraid of? Why are you afraid? But it's an interesting dynamic. Now, also you see the difference in what racism is, do you not? Racism implies you have not just prejudice, but the power to do something with that prejudice. Now, I don't like you, not only that, but I'm going to control whether you can get, I may say I hate you. I hate white people. I hate them. It's not going to change you getting that, loan when you go to the bank. I can hate you all the way to the bank. Not going to change. Do you see the difference? That whereas white racism says, not only do I not like you, but I'm going to change the impact of where you can live. I'm going to determine with that racism where your powers are. You following me? And I'm talking about as a group, not an individual.
The biggest reason that I know that white feminism is a real problem is just the perceived threat that so many white women feel from black women just existing. Before I continue, I'm going to reference myself as attractive. Yes, I know, shocker. I did this before and y'all got on my ass. I don't know what to say, we're going to keep doing it. But as a black woman, when you transition from unattractive to being perceived as attractive, you will notice a change in behavior from not only men, but also women, specifically white women. Especially when you don't fit a certain stereotype that they associate with your race and what they deem a black woman should act like. It's almost like they don't know how to act with you and they end up, feeling this contempt. They implicitly know that they are the standard. They have been socialized to know that. It's been their experience to have men want them of any race. But in that, they also know that whiteness is sort of blankness. And I actually don't mean that in a mean way. I mean, it is the standard. It's the norm. It is the opposite of exoticism. So in their male-centered minds, they're thinking, yeah, in majority of cases, I'm going to get the guy. But when they want a little switch up, a change from their usual, that is when women of color, specifically black women, become a big threat. It's a lot of them sort of know that a lot of girls look like them. A lot of pretty girls look like them. They can never account for the allure of a deviation from that norm. When they see an attractive black woman, it's okay, I have to see it. How can I fight against this? I don't have the facilities to fight against this. And to compensate for that, I think that's why we see a lot of white women try to play into the features of women of color. The style, the slick backs, the lip filler, aneurysms, all of it. They want to be able to oscillate between all types of attractiveness, become this sort of maxed out woman who has every single thing a guy could ever want at any time. Because they are so used to being the standard, they cannot accept someone wanting something different. So they kind of try to borrow parts of you to become that so that won't happen again. It's very interesting and it happens more than you would think.
It's so weird watching black people get mad at white people for starting functioning white communities. It's how happy we'd be to see black people start a functioning black community.
We would burn it down, right? Was that what you was about to say? Because that is the only thing that has ever happened in American history.
Sir, you don't understand. You're helping all Americans by taking all the racist people and moving them into one area. I may help you pack your bags and rent a moving truck for you. I may donate to your cause so we can get this thing rolling. We need y'all all to be in the same area so we know who exactly you people are.
I challenge any European American to name me one, just one, in 300 years, name me one time black people have built an all-black everything, right? A thriving community, a thriving functioning system, right? And white people have not destroyed it. Any group, any community, any town has been destroyed, burned down to the ground by European Americans. What's extremely disheartening from European Americans is in the year of 2025, they then say, oh, why aren't black people building functioning towns? You blew them all up. You think if you keep blowing up, bombing, and burning down every town that black people built, that we're just going to keep building more and more and more? You force black people to assimilate into American culture and then point the finger and say, why aren't you doing this? Your analogy is the same as burning down somebody's house, coming back the next day and say, hey, you're homeless, right?
You're pushing us to the limit. And what do I mean by that?
You're asking us to talk about history, the history of the South. This is in Georgia. What happened in Georgia? There were savages in Georgia. It was the ancestors of the white right-wingers. They were absolute savages. They murdered people, they lynched people, they raped people, they enslaved people. They took babies from their mothers and sold them as property. You want to talk about savages? Your ancestors were the biggest savages the world has ever seen. And so don't you dare call a black man a savage after you murdered him. Don't you dare do that. I'm so sick of African Americans being called violent when the world's worst violence was done to them, not by them, to them, not by them. For God's sake, you want to do racist stereotypes? If it fit anywhere, and it doesn't, but if it fit anywhere, it would certainly fit white right-wingers in the South, who has hundreds of years of history of being savages. Savages!